You are listening to Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. This podcast is brought to you by Know the Self Mystery School, activating men and women to live with purpose. It was created with the sole intention to release toxic shame, illuminate our shadow nature, and expose the mysterious entities that feed off your most precious life force, your sexual energy. The mantras we sing in the beginning and end of each episode are ancient Sanskrit prayers to invoke the brightest light of truth and to liberate us from our fears. To learn more about our life-enhancing courses and transformational retreats, visit knowtheself.com. Let's dive in.
I know, you wrote the book on synchronicity, and synchronicity is a word that a lot of people are using now. And, I guess when we think of synchronicity, I think a lot of people tend to think of it's kind of like magic. It's kind of exciting. It's, little crumbs that show us that we're on the right path, or just things that are reflecting what is directly going on inside of us. And then usually people experience that as, this incredible feeling, right? So, but we all know that there's a dark side of synchronicity. And so I wanted to kind of, I wanted you to expand on that and talk about like the shadow side of synchronicity and what we can learn from that, because we really have to look at that, because that can get us into some trouble.
Oh, totally. And I mean, who doesn't know someone who's into synchronicity and seems completely like off their rocker? I mean, some people get into synchronicity and it's a beautiful thing and it is guiding us somewhere. And when we have a lot of synchronicity in our life, I mean, you just feel special. You feel like you have this connection to the divine, like life is orchestrating around you. You can get into this really euphoric sort of co-creator godlike state. But there are a lot of pitfalls to synchronicity, and I want to talk about it because I think there's sort of I feel a lot of spiritual seekers get stuck with this pitfall of synchronicity where they become inactive. Like, here's some pitfalls. So if this is you guys, please listen up. So if you're following synchronicities, you get all the numbers, signals, and maybe you don't start or stop anything until you get a sign. Like, you're just waiting for the sign. So you're completely inactive, waiting for the sign. To me, this is could be a sign of you lacking responsibility for basic things in your life. You're disconnecting from ordinary reality and creating a split in your psyche. So just because you follow synchronicity and you see it's magic doesn't give you an excuse to be like irresponsible with life. And I think a lot of spiritual seekers do this. They get extremely ungrounded and flighty, like they're just looking for signs and symbols all day. It's almost like a neuroses where their mind goes into this hyperdrive and they're making meaning out of every little thing. And I'm the queen of synchronicity, so I'm not knocking you. Like, I get it, I see it, I track it. But there's a pitfall to this. So if you're ungrounded, if you're flighty, if you're waiting around for signs, if you're not in action about anything in your life because it hasn't just happened magically, you're in the pitfall. You're in the shadow side of the synchronicity. If your friends and family are concerned about you, there's probably a deep, ungrounded nature to your connection to synchronicity. And if you're in this phase of your synchronicity attuning, you really need a guide and a mentor. You need to do some of the deep healing work and clearing work in order to find your way through this. So synchronicity for me is just a band of energy. It's outside of time. And when we're inside of the synchronicity frequency band, we see that everything is connected. I mean, that is the nature of synchronicity. We see the superstring theory and that quantum physics talks about, like, or what our indigenous elders have been telling us for thousands of years. Everything is connected to everything else. So when you're experiencing synchronicity, it's not that you're special and you're the next Messiah. It's that you are touching the very fabric of our cosmos and what creates us. And you're so much more than your physical nature. And so when you're touching that band, you start to be a co-creator. But if you're sitting there waiting for signs and symbols, you can be prey to a lot of nefarious energy that is very real also, and also uses that synchronicity band to distract you, to mess with you, to people who are in this synchronicity shadow side are probably the most gullible, most easily manipulated people there are, because they're literally sitting ducks for what we would call dark magic or the occult people to manipulate. So please, you guys, I know there's a lot of spiritual seekers listening to our podcast, and I'm with you. I've been there, and it's very real. So how do you move through it? Like, if you can just see synchronicity for what it is, if you can find what your meaning is for the things that are happening and really be objective and not get so emotionally caught up. Like, if your emotions are totally caught up in your synchronicity and they're throwing you like, oh, he's my soulmate, he's my twin flame, and nothing can break, and you start getting off on some really romance is a big one of them. Romantic notions that are carrying you to this kind of dreamlike state that is not grounded at all in reality, then you are being affected by the shadow nature. And no judgment there, just become aware of it. Make sure you know how to follow your own truth. Make sure you have some like truth testing abilities inside yourself so that you can navigate those and not be, fooled or manipulated.
Well, a lot of this too comes back to that we've been so disconnected and not taught. I mean, like, imagine if we were all raised in mystery schools, or if our schools were all like training you to understand your kundalini and understanding your sexual nature and understanding your spiritual connection to, or allowing yourself to be, to dance for, to be connected with God, or to do like all these things, then people probably wouldn't go so far off into, they wouldn't need to fall off the edge when it comes to synchronicity or go into the shadow of synchronicity, because that would have just been something that it's not necessarily special. It's just something that is real.
It's natural.
It would
be a natural day. Yeah, and unfortunately, because we've been so disconnected from the unseen worlds, through being enforced to be educated in certain traditional education systems or religious indoctrination, or even the political indoctrination, it's disassociating us from that unified field, from that place of our co-creation. And synchronicity, when you start to tune into it and it starts to communicate, you start realizing like, wow, I'm a part of this greater universe. But you've always been, it's been there all the time. You just weren't aware of it because that part of your brain or that part of your consciousness was conditioned to shut off, to disconnect you from your soul. So synchronicity really is leading us back to ourselves, back to our creative potential, or the creator, the creatrix that lives within each one of us. And it's our soul helping us to understand the essence. It's like the soul gets awakened at the deepest sense of ourselves when we really start to
Right.
follow the frequency. But if we're
Well,
looking outside ourselves is where we get caught up in like the traps of it.
yeah, it's I'm realizing this is really actually there's so many layers to this, because it can also even be like, now I'm thinking what part of this, for a lot of people, um synchronicity may be the first time that feel they feel connected with spirit, or that they're
Absolutely.
allowed to connect with spirit. But much like, even, you know, let's say you have a great sexual experience, for some people that might even be, oh, this is spirituality. Or, you know, and again, like, I think it comes back to this, like, for me, having been raised in a fragmented type of spirituality, and then that being kind of taken from me, or that being like, you know, just completely the rug being pulled out from underneath me with that, then it's like, to get back to that in a way, or to be allowed to feel that again. And also I'm realizing that, you know, what part of synchronicity is related to trauma,
Mm-hmm.
just, or the need to experience it, or you know, and it's a fine line, because it's all, in a way, all of life is that way. It's all existing that way all the time. Most of the time we're just not even aware of it, you know, like this idea of manifestation, you know, which is a pitfall in and of itself. Manifestation is happening all the time, in every second, every moment, everything, but we're just not really aware of it. So if there's some big manifestation, or if we're focusing on, then it becomes this, you know, this thing is like, oh, I manifested that, you know, but then it's like, actually, how's that any
Well, and
different?
manifest, I want to stop you for a second because you're bringing up some huge topics that we could kind of parse out for a minute. But manifestation like happens from that frequency band of synchronicity. So when you're in the synchronicity of life, when you're outside of time, when you're working with pure energy and the connection of all things, you manifest instantly. It's just like you become the creatrix, and you just manifest with your words, with your thoughts. I mean, I know many of you listening have had this experience where you think something, whether it's good or bad, and it instantly manifests in front of you. This is you living in that frequency band. And you mentioned about trauma and synchronicity. Well, I think trauma is a gateway for a lot of us. I know from all of the spiritual healers and mystics and people that I've worked closely with, the most magical amongst them, the best seers in the world, have all had a severe amount of trauma. And I think when we experience traumatic effects or situations, instances, it's in those moments where, you know, we pray, where we ask for a divine intervention, and we start touching into our capacity beyond the physical realm. And we start touching into the fact that we can control things, even if we're, you know, bound and gagged or being abused in some way, or we're a young child, or we can't speak, or we've lost our voice, or we're literally being forced into some submissive or you know, like a very horrible situation. What can you do in those moments is you pray, you go inwards, and you start activating, you start leaving your body. You have either a near-death experience, or you start to realize that you can it's like you switch on your other sensory modes when you've had a lot of trauma. So most people who are really avid seers and whatnot, yeah, it has come from a path of trauma. And, you know, we can thank it, and it finally has meaning when we can be able to use that to help people switch it on without having to have a horrible traumatic experience. But just like that, you know, we're in this global lockdown right now. This is the perfect time for people to go inward and really deal with themselves, to govern themselves, like to govern their households, to be the creator of the energy inside their homes. They can no longer blame everything outside. Well, they can, and they probably are, but you start to live with your own expression of what's happening, right? Like when you spend a lot of time at home, which many of us are, all of us are doing right now, you start to see, oh, well, what do I want to create today? What kind of experience? And you can see, like, by your thoughts, by the things you're consuming is what you're radiating, you know, and you get into this rhythm. So synchronicity has a positive side, it has a negative side. And I think, unfortunately, many people get trapped in the pitfall of it and don't actually see where it's taking them. So my invitation to all of you who are listening, who maybe are feeling like you got trapped, or maybe you're scared of synchronicity because it's led you astray before, and maybe it led you to a narcissistic abuser. I hear this one a lot from people who write in to me. They saying, is it really a good thing? Or it led me down this road. Well, why is it leading you there? What did you need to learn from that experience? And to me, synchronicity is the key that unlocks the door within you to touch your soul essence. So when you do that, you're able to understand, like, oh, I am here for a purpose. Oh, I do have something to share with the world. And maybe it's just in the simple presencing of myself. And in that way, I can bring something forward. So please keep searching, you guys. Don't get stuck in the pitfall, and really reach out, like, because anyone in that pitfall phase, you need guidance. You need to heal the samskaras, heal all the traumas, the wounds. You need to get beyond the victim consciousness in order to see what's on the other side of that. So that's my long-winded answer to your question.
I like it. Well, what about how you were talking in the World Parliament, the spiritual World Parliament, and you were talking about some different things. Like, can you share anything from that hasn't been in our podcast so far? Or I don't know if there's like levels of like the mission, or what happens when we start to go through synchronicity, or we start to put our work into the world.
Yeah, some of the things I just shared, I did speak about in that short talk there. But I feel that synchronicity is connected to our soul mission. And, you know, the soul mission is not to be confused with your career or your vocation, because your vocation is something you actually consciously choose to do. You go to school, you learn a set of skills, and you choose a career path. Your soul mission is not like that. You do not choose your soul mission consciously. It's happening at the deepest essence. It's inside your codex. It's in your DNA, and it gets awakened when you touch your soul. So it's been with you since birth. It's going to be with you after your death, and it has been with you through all of your other incarnations. So the soul mission, how we activate it, is by listening deeply and allowing it to flower from within us. And when it happens, we go through these like 4 stages that I've defined these 4 stages because I'm noticing that many people have touched it, but not many people actually bring it forward. So those 4 phases are the activation phase, where you touch the soul essence and it starts communicating, where you might be having a ton of synchronicities, and you might go into this like Christ consciousness, Messiah complex thing, where you're going to concern a lot of people because you're going to try and save everyone, or you think that you know everything. And it's true, like, you touch your God essence, and anyone who touches that has to pass through the ego. We have to burn up all of the ego things where we think that we're here to save the planet, right? So a lot of people get trapped there, and they do nothing with it. They just judge everyone. They sit back, they do nothing, and they have a lot to say about everyone, but they're actually not serving humanity whatsoever. So that's in the activation phase. And the second phase is the hardest phase. That's when you go into the greatest challenge. And in that phase, you you become afraid of your own soul design. You get so terrified by what you've discovered inside your soul that you don't want to tell anyone, you don't want to share it. You're going to pretend you want to go back to status quo. You want to go back to when it wasn't awakened because life seems simpler. You want to hide out. You will self-sabotage like crazy. You're going to have a huge fear of being seen. It's going to be very, very vulnerable. This phase is the most difficult to pass through, where you really need mentorship, you need guidance, you need check-ins, and you need someone to help you get through, because you have to clear all of these, karmic issues, traumas, wounds that aren't allowing you to hold your totality, because your foundation has to be strong enough for your destiny. And if it's not, there's nowhere for the energy to go. So you're going to feel out of control. The third phase is when you start to ground it in. You start to ground your life, your soul mission. And this takes a huge leap of faith and like a really brave heart. But the second you do it, you're living with more purpose. You know what you're doing every day. You wake up and you're there to serve. You realize that you can do your soul work in your sleep. In fact, you're always doing it. It becomes like this effortless way. And it may be a part of your vocation, but it has nothing to do necessarily with your vocation. It's who you are. It's who you're being in every moment of the day. Your soul mission is your essence expressed through you. And so it will have a myriad of expressions in the world. It's going to show up in a lot of different ways. In this phase, you also need support, a lot of support, and you really need to start creating more harmony and balance in your life so you can really strengthen your foundation to hold your destiny. And then the fourth phase is what I call like the sustainable dream phase, where your life, your soul mission and your career path merge. And so you're actually creating a huge impact in the world. You're able to be at cause in every aspect of your life. And you start to create more harmony, more joy, more abundance, and everything starts to flow in this beautiful rhythm, beautiful nature. And in this phase, your deepest need is to just serve the greater good, to serve humanity. So that's what I was sharing in the World Parliament. You guys can actually check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. It was a fun conference. There was over 1,000 speakers from all over the world, from 6 continents, all sharing different spiritual teachings on a lot of different topics. And today we did North America started. So it's been in South America. There's a Congress in Asia, and the World Parliament is like putting together these councils of light workers, of spiritual seekers, to discuss these things in councils and groups and circle structure. So you guys should check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. But
well, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
What was that?
It was a lot for one episode. I feel a little winded from speaking so fast, but thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, I'm going to need to listen to the last part again.
Conclude our session for today, but thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Satya, for asking and being such a inspiration for me this week.
You're welcome. Yeah, this is I want to listen to this episode myself again, just because I think it's so juicy. All right.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us here. This podcast was brought to you by Know the Self, a mystery school for modern day living. To learn about our life enhancing courses and transformational retreats, you can find us on social media at Know the Self or visit our website knowtheself.com. See you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you'd like to contact us and stay in touch with us, you can find us at lovesexagenda.com. That's lovesexagenda.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.